Imagine you are one of the wealthiest aristocrats in the British Empire. You unexpectedly pass away, your family mourns you, and your massive estate is eventually seized by the government. But 12 years later, a naked, ash covered holy man wanders into town, sits down in the street, and casually mentions that he isn't just a wandering monk, he is the dead prince, and he would very much like his money back. Welcome to Exhibit Absurd. In 1921, the British colonial court system in India was paralyzed by the Bhawal Case, a 25-year legal war that involved alleged poisoning, missing corpses, tiger attacks, and a man who took his fight to come back from the dead all the way to the highest court in London. Our story begins in the Bhawal Estate, a massive, incredibly wealthy kingdom in Bengal. To put this in perspective, this estate was roughly the size of the modern U.S. state of Rhode Island. It generated an annual tax revenue that would be worth tens of millions of dollars today, making the total land and asset value equivalent to a modern multi-billion-dollar corporate empire. It was ruled by a family of local royalty, and our focus is on the middle brother, Ramendra Narayan Roy, officially titled the second Kumar. In Bengali aristocratic titles, a Kumar translates to prince or heir. As the second prince, Ramendra wasn't bogged down by the primary administrative duties of the state. He was the ultimate Edwardian playboy. He spent his days riding elephants, hunting Bengal tigers, and spending unbelievable amounts of money. He also spent a lot of time ignoring his wife, Bibhabadi, in favor of a sprawling network of mistresses. But this reckless lifestyle caught up with him. By 1909, the second Kumar had contracted a severe case of syphilis. Desperate to cure him, his family packed him up along with his wife and a massive entourage and sent him to the cool, crisp mountain resort town of Darjeeling to recover. He was supposed to get better. Instead, he vanished. On the evening of May 8, 1909, Ramendra's condition rapidly deteriorated. He collapsed in agony, and the local doctors officially declared him dead. Following Hindu tradition, his body was immediately taken to the local cremation grounds. But just as the funeral pyre was being prepared, a massive, violent thunderstorm struck the mountain. The torrential rain and howling winds forced the mourning party to drop everything and run for cover. When the storm finally passed and the family returned to the cremation ground, the body was gone. Rather than tell the public that they had literally lost the prince's corpse, the family panicked. They allegedly burned an empty bed or a substitute body the next day, held a state mourning, and officially declared the second Kumar dead. Because Ramendra had no children, his widow inherited his share. But soon after, his other brothers died too. The British colonial government, seeing an incredibly profitable opportunity, stepped in. They used a brutal, highly convenient legal mechanism called the Court of Wards. Under British colonial law, the government could legally seize control of any estate if the surviving heirs were deemed incompetent or incapable of managing it. Conveniently, the British generally classified women and widows as incapable. The empire essentially declared, "Don't worry, we'll manage this multi-billion-dollar estate for you." In reality, it was a legal loophole to seize the land, collect all the taxes, and charge the estate massive management fees. The British were now making millions off the dead prince's land. The case was closed until 1920. 11 years later, in 1920, a Naga Sannyasi wandered into the city of Dhaka. Now, a Naga Sannyasi isn't just a regular monk. They are an ancient, highly respected, and sometimes feared order of ascetic holy men in Hinduism. They renounce absolutely all worldly possessions, meaning they wear no clothes, cover their bodies entirely in funeral ash, and spend their lives wandering the Himalayas performing severe spiritual disciplines. This ash-covered holy man spent his days sitting quietly on a street corner, but the local tenants started whispering. The holy man had a remarkably familiar face. His eyes, his build, his specific facial features. He looked exactly like the dead playboy prince. Rumors exploded. Ramendra's biological sister rushed to Dhaka, took one look at the ash-covered monk, and burst into tears. She claimed she recognized him immediately. The tenants of the estate, who hated the heavy taxation of the British Court of Wards, overwhelmingly rallied behind him, cheering that their true landlord had returned from the dead. Under immense pressure, the holy man finally spoke up. He claimed that he didn't die in Darjeeling. He said he had been poisoned, fell into a deep coma, and was left for dead at the cremation ground. While the storm raged, he was rescued by a group of wandering Naga holy men. He woke up with severe amnesia and simply lived with them for a decade until his memory slowly started to return. He was back, and he wanted his kingdom. You might think his wife would be thrilled that her husband was alive. You would be completely wrong. Bibhabadi, the widow, aggressively denied that this ash-covered vagabond was her husband. She refused to even look at him. And the British Court of Wards entirely backed her up. Why? Because if the prince was alive, the British government would have to hand back control of one of the richest estates in India. The British authorities immediately launched a massive smear campaign. They put up posters claiming the man was an illiterate imposter from Punjab. But the tenants didn't care. They stopped paying taxes to the British and started paying their rent directly to the holy man. In 1930, the sannyasi formally filed a civil lawsuit to reclaim his identity. The British government realized this was no longer a local dispute. It was a massive threat to colonial authority. They funded the widow's defense using the revenues of the very estate the prince was trying to claim. What followed was one of the longest, most exhausting, and utterly absurd trials in the history of the British Empire. The trial was an absolute circus. It lasted for years. The court recorded testimonies from over 1,000 witnesses. Because there was no DNA testing in the 1930s, the lawyers had to rely on physical anomalies. How do you legally prove an ash-covered ascetic is a royal aristocrat? You pull out his medical records. The plaintiff's lawyers presented a laundry list of identifying marks. The prince had a very specific, irregular foot size. So did the monk. The prince had been mauled by a Bengal tiger years earlier, leaving a massive distinct scar on his arm. The monk rolled up his sleeve in court, revealing the exact same tiger claw scar. But the British defense lawyers went straight for the gutter. They argued that the dead prince had advanced syphilis, which leaves very specific, undeniable scarring on the body. They demanded the holy man prove he had it. In a wildly dramatic courtroom moment, medical experts were brought in to examine the monk. They confirmed that yes, this man also had the distinct bodily scars of a survivor of 1900s syphilis. The defense brought in prostitutes from Calcutta to testify about the prince's habits. The plaintiff brought in surviving Himalayan monks to testify about finding his body in the rain. It was a complete clash of high society scandals and ancient mysticism, all meticulously recorded in strict British legal formatting. Finally, in 1936, the judge delivered his verdict. The sannyasi was, legally and undeniably, the true prince. The British Court of Wards and the widow were furious. They appealed to the High Court in Calcutta. The High Court reviewed the mountains of evidence and agreed the prince is alive. Still refusing to give up the fortune, the widow took the case to the absolute highest legal authority in the British Empire, the Privy Council in London. For years, the case dragged on across the ocean. Finally, on July 30th, 1946, 25 years after he first wandered into town covered in ash, the Privy Council issued their final binding decree. They dismissed the widow's appeal. The man was legally Ramendra Narayan Roy. He had beaten his family, he had beaten the British Empire, and he had won back his entire kingdom. But the universe has a very dark sense of humor. The very next day, on August 1st, 1946, while on his way to offer prayers of thanksgiving for his ultimate victory, the prince suffered a massive fatal stroke. He dropped dead. For real this time. He fought for 25 years to get his money back and died before he could spend a single cent. The Bhawal case remains one of the most astonishing identity trials in global history. It proves that with enough tenant support, a perfectly matching tiger scar, and an absolutely unyielding legal team, a man can literally return from the grave to bankrupt the British Empire. If you want to uncover more bizarre evidence, missing corpses, and chaotic archives from the strangest corners of legal history, make sure to hit that subscribe button, drop a comment below, and leave a like on this video. We'll see you next time on Exhibit Absurd.